Spiritual Fitness Podcast. We back again with another episode, and I am so honored to be here with Miss Alea Lovely. She's a spiritual philosopher. She's also the podcast host for Spiritual Shit. We definitely gonna talk about it all today. She has a new book that's out and it's coming out, but it's out. Meaningful Manifestations. We're gonna talk about her formula to manifest things. And we're just going to get into the subconscious, the higher conscious of her and what she brings to this world. With people listening, I met this woman on an airplane when I was listening to her podcast about astrology. And it's amazing how the universe works. And she's here today on Spiritual Fitness Podcast. Alea, how are you?
I am so good, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. I think that it was so serendipitous that we were able to connect that way, the way that we did. So I'm pumped. Let's do it.
Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's talk about spiritual shit, right? That's the name of your podcast. Where did that come from? How did you even get to that point to even have the bandwidth, the authenticity to say, this is my podcast, this is what it is?
Yeah. So I've been very, I would say, tapped in since I was little, but I was raised very religious. And because I was raised really religious, there wasn't a lot of place for the things that I was experiencing. And so those experiences started to really pop up a lot more in my early 20s. And I was having a really hard time finding community and in the things that I was experiencing. And this, there, new age stuff had kind of taken off or whatever, but it was still very white and still very love and light. And I was like, I just don't feel like I have my people to connect to. And my friends were tired of hearing about my ghost stories and things like that. And I was like, there has to be something more. So in a week's time, 7 different people came to me and they were like, you should start a podcast. You should be talking about this on a podcast. And I was like, a podcast? Everybody's got a podcast. I don't even listen to podcasts. And that 7th one, it kind of pushed me. And I was like, okay, I hear you, universe. I need to follow this nudge. And I was sitting in my 2005 Volvo, parking my car, getting ready to get into my apartment. And I heard spiritual shit. I just heard it. And they said, this is the name. This is the name of your podcast. And at first I was like, oh man, yeah, that is dope. But then I floated it around to a few of my friends and they were like, oh, do you sure you want to lead with that? Are you sure you want it to be profanity? And I was like, you know what? This is the voice that I think spirituality needs right now. And I feel that there are a lot of people who don't align with where it was 10 years ago, and being able to create space where I'm a little irreverent. I like to joke around a little bit and things that don't feel so stuffy. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm just going to do it. And it's just for me. It's, for me to find my community. I didn't expect for it to take off the way that it did.
I'm big on energy. I'm big on frequency. So when I went to go search in the podcast, database as I'm boarding a flight, your image, your name of your podcast stuck out to me. You were just so authentic. You were so raw. I found out that you had an Aries moon and you was a Cancer sun and then a Scorpio rising. I was like, oh, she's really real. She's really raw and she's in there and she's going to ask you questions that make you feel uncomfortable. But she's going to speak spiritual shit and she's going to tell you the truth and she's going to help you grow and she's going to help you evolve, because the people who are the rawest and the realest help you the most in life.
Right.
And that's your energy. I feel like I've known you for some time. And here we are today talking about all these things. But let's get into crystals, because I went on your YouTube and never heard of, maybe I have, and I just didn't know. I think the crystal name is Moldavite or Moldavite.
Moldavite, yeah.
Can you express what that is and how beneficial that crystal is, or crystals in general?
I do think that crystals hold energy, and whatever energy you feel resonance with can help assist in being able to help you expand, basically. And actually, as we're having this interview, I have a Numite on. And a Numite, yeah, you got your, we got our stuff on. I'm wearing a Numite, which is really, you can see my big geodes back there. I really enjoy being able to play with the energy of crystals, and Moldavite in particular was really helpful in assisting my awakening. And when I say awakening, I kind of hate that term because everybody's like, oh, I'm awakening, but it's literally like you coming into a new version of yourself and evolving. But it's not a beginner crystal. Let's just preface that. It's definitely a crystal that is there for rapid change. It's trying to accelerate you and get you into the next space. So if you're comfortable with, your entire life falling apart so you can get where you need to go quickly, then great. That's the crystal for you. If you're not, choose a softer, maybe start with a rose quartz or something. It's a very spiky, like feeling, like you can put it in your hands. My husband's a lot funny because I put it in his hands. He's like, I don't like that. I don't want it. I'm like, maybe a Libyan desert glasses for you, but Numite also has a similar, almost more intense feeling. And I play, I'm really into jewelry and stuff like that. Gold holds a very particular frequency, sapphires and so on. So I love like playing with crystals and utilizing them, especially in the home, like as staples for energy. I put selenites over my window seals, and like my daughter, I put certain crystals underneath her bed. Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, and I think you said something about awakening, right? Let's talk about that, because also speaking on astrology, I just found out 2 weeks ago about annual perfections, right? So annual perfections is the theme you have every year of your life based on your age. So last year I was in my 12th year cycle, which was, I went through a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
What I discovered was, for one, most people, if they're not in this line of work, they don't understand awakenings or healing or evolving. What is the best way for someone to get through a spiritual awakening, and why does it happen? Like, my soul just felt like it was gone.
Yeah.
And then I had like this new energy come in. I let go. I thought I was going to lose everything, honestly. Like, it was, I was scared. Like, shit. Like, really, spirituality helped me. But what should someone do? Because I think a lot of people in these times are going through a lot of internal warfare, spiritual warfare, and they don't know what to do because they don't have the tools or they don't have the awareness.
What makes it really difficult when we're going through one of those evolutionary processes is we're always trying to hold on. And we're not willing to let go in order to move into the next space that the universe, God, whoever you identify with, is trying to take you in. And so the evolutionary process can feel difficult. If you think about a caterpillar and a butterfly situation, right? Like, it has to break out of that cocoon in order to get the strength to fly.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know of many caterpillars that are like, I'm cool. Like, I'm chilling here in the dark. Like, don't bother me. But I do feel that sometimes when we think our life is falling apart, it is really coming together. I've had these tower moments happen time and time, almost nearly every year. The surrender process, like really literally being like, all right, universe, like for me, my phrase is whatever you have for me. Like, whatever you have for me, I want whatever you have for me. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have desires, but like, for instance, like this book, right? Everybody thinks this is my first book. This is my third book. And the first two books bombed horrendously. And not because I thought they were bad books. Well, the first one was, but that I didn't have the reach, or I didn't have the publisher, whatever the thing was. And me feeling in a way that I was, I'm not good enough, or like nobody likes me, or, like whatever the things that we tell ourselves when we feel like we have failed at something, but they weren't failures. They were very much me getting the stepstones and the experience to build and be able to pull together what I've pulled together this time. And so it's like, hindsight is always 20/20, but while you're in it, I've learned, because, universe is actually sometimes really hard on me, because I think they just want content for my podcast. Like, they're just like, what are you learning? Oh, cool. This will be a good lesson. Yeah. So I find myself in these positions where I become really neutral really fast, where it's like, all right, okay, I don't have any control over the situation. So let me let go, and let me they say, Jesus, take the wheel. Being in that space of being open to what the universe has for you. I think that is really hard space to be in. Because I mean, look at our world right now. There's all kinds of stuff. People are getting really upset and angsty. And it's like, I can't control this.
Yeah.
I have to be in a space of love and gratitude, and like be in this matrix at the time to have these evolutionary experiences that help my soul grow. So I have to be able to let go.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that word surrender, let go, is so common, but what does letting go look like? And what does that feel like in your body or in your nervous system when you think about it? Because I think most people want to let go, Alea. Like, I want to let go, but I don't know how.
How? Yeah. One example, I was supposed to move to Paris, and I had a visa planned out. I was living in New York at the time, and trying to trust my intuition, I was like, I know that I'm supposed to move to Paris. I've done all the praying and meditating or whatever. This is what I want. This is what I desire. Universe, make it happen. And I was like, so in New York, it's really hard to get an apartment, as I'm sure it is in LA. And you have to like have all this money and like your firstborn child signed off away. And so there just being this like I can't let go of my apartment while my landlord is being like, are you going to resign for next year? And I'm like, I don't know yet because I haven't received my visa approval yet. And her pressuring me and me saying, okay, like I have to trust that the universe has my best and highest in mind. So I'm going to let my apartment go in faith that I'm going to be able to get this visa. So 2 weeks after I let my apartment go and I move out into a friend's while I'm waiting, I get the visa rejection. And it was just one of those moments of like, those Alfred Hitchcock movies where the camera like pans out. It's like, like, you feel really disassociated and detached from your reality. And it feels so surreal because that meant like immediately then I was homeless. I had nowhere to go except back home to Kansas City, a place I said I would never move back to. And just this feeling of like, I failed. I fucked up. Like I fucked my life up. And I had everything going for me. I was very stressed where I was at, but and then having to return like what I felt like was to the beginning. And it's like, well, now I have my tail between my legs, having to move in with a friend, having to figure out what I'm going to do while I'm there, etc. And the thing is that in that process, I was having to vet what my desire was. Why did I want to move to Paris? Well, I wanted to move to Paris because Paris is fucking cool, but like I wanted to move to Paris because I thought it would be easier to find love there. And like I was having a really hard time in the dating scene in New York. I didn't feel like anyone loved me. Like I had a much better experience being in another country. And, I had the rose colored glasses on, really. And, I was idealistically thinking that I would get there. I'm a photographer too. Okay. And I would get there and I would be able to make money and hustle like I was able to make it in New York. And I ended up returning back to Kansas City thinking like, well, this was the mistake. Well, then I had my spirit guide come to me and really kind of like hold me accountable and say, why did you really want to move there? Because I want to learn French, I want to do so. No. Why do you really want to live there? Like what you formed is a scarcity belief of a desire that you're trying to push forward, which is not necessarily in your highest and best good. And so they said to me, and it's so crazy the way they said it. They said, in 4 years, if you weren't married and had the children in the house or whatever, would you have thought that moving to Paris was a mistake? And I'm hearing this in my head, right? And I'm going, in 4 years, that'd be a long time, like for me to be there and not get the thing that I wanted. And they're kind of giving me this reality check. So I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. Fine, spirit. I was mad. And exactly to the time, 4 years later, I meet my husband, I have the baby, I get this amazing house, like my career takes off. And I would not have been doing podcasting, writing a book or anything like that if I was living in Paris. I would probably stuck to photography.
And I think it's such a beautiful testament to having faith because we are the ones, if I'm not mistaken, you went for it. You jumped out there, you went to New York and you chased your dream. You went for how you felt. And I think that's what I want people listening to know, that you're not a woman who just have a podcast and a book and a baby all because, no, you went through the tough moments. You went through.
I went through it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You woke up, you learned, you earned, you gained, you evolved and became this woman that people listening, what I'm telling you, we're manifesting this now. We're about to get into the conversation of meaningful manifestation, but this woman will have her own show that will be syndicated and people will be listening to her. I'm telling you, I'm in energy right now. She has the aura. She has the presence that she is supposed to be speaking to the masses with love, with joy, and with authenticity. So that was a meaningful manifestation that you didn't make it to Paris, that you had to come back home to Kansas City to be this woman that you are today.
Yeah.
So speaking on that, let's talk about how meaningful it is to have a manifestation and what does that all mean? And let's take us through this book because I want to know.
Yeah. So the kickoff of this book was from the passing away of my aunt. Okay. She had passed in her early 50s and the thought that, it was really sudden and very tragic. And the thought that I had was, did she have a good life? Like, that's all I could ruminate on is, did she have a good life? Like, did she feel satisfied with what she had completed in her short, few years here? How did she feel about that? And it really struck me because I think like we're so often caught up in, capitalism and like what we're supposed to do next. And this is what success looks like and more followers and blah. And it's like, it's not making me happy. I'm not happy. So, that thought I do a lot of studies in like NDEs and religion and like all that kind of stuff. But I started thinking about end of life studies and like what people would say when they got to the end of their life? Like, what did they regret? What were they happy about? And a lot of times people will come through and say, I wish I'd been more authentic. I wish I told that person I loved them. I wish I'd spent more time with my kids instead of chasing that career. I wish I had done things that are more meaningful. That nobody's saying like, I wish I had that yacht. I wish I had more followers. I wish I, got this and this and this. And so knowing that, I said, okay, I need to write out 5 maxims. I had 20, but I was like, let's pare them down to 5 memorable maxims, and maxims meaning values in my life, things that I want to manifest, things that will be the structure of everything that I decide I want in my life, that it fits within my value system. Mm-hmm. And so my value system was created. And obviously this evolves for everyone. But when I take people through the book and you go through 5 things, mine was quality time with my family, a romantic partner, right? Travel and passions achieved, to be able to have creative energy, do things that I like, financial security, not even financial crazy abundance, millions and millions of dollars, just security, like that we were able to have comfort and know that our lights are going to be on. So like the things that you want, like, it's not like more clothes. It's not like, it's like being able to spend, for me, it was just time with my family, really spending that like quality time with my family, being able to do work that I believed in, being able to make an impact, things like that. And recognizing that those were the important things, I then created this method and I channeled it. It was so like, whoop, I was on a road trip and it just came to me. And I called it the Imagine Method because it stands for I, which is Inception. Where are you starting from? Because a lot of times we are looking at, like, oh, Eric's got this show and he went and did this or whatever. And you're not looking at where you're starting from and comparing yourself to someone else's story, hidden story, and guilting yourself, shaming yourself around that when it's like, that's not your story. And you might be a little bit behind. So I always give the example that, if you're in LA and I'm in Kansas City and we're both trying to get to New York, I'm going to get there faster than you. Yeah. Because like I'm closer to New York than you are. And I'll, like, what are you going to be upset and be like, oh, she got there before me? And it's like, bro, you started in LA. Mm-hmm. So because of that, sometimes we have to look at where we're starting from and not compare ourselves to where we see other people gaining those things. That is looking at privilege, that is looking at marginalized groups, that is looking at like, do you live in a war-torn country? Like if you don't have your basic needs met, you're not thinking about how to manifest, right? Right. So it's kind of a big deal. So where are you starting from? First, getting that. Then you go into M, which is manifestation. What do you want? You wouldn't believe the amount of clients that I meet with that don't know what they want.
No clarity.
No clarity. They're led by their inauthentic desires versus their authentic desires.
Hold on. Pause that. Hold on. I've never heard that. Whoa. What do you mean by inauthentic desires? You got to unpack that. What?
Inauthentic desires are, what society tells us we should want.
Oh, wow.
It's what our parents want for us. It's what our partner wants for us. It's the pressure that we feel to be a size 0 because the magazine wants that for us. It is us not in our heart's desire, not in our intuition, not into our like life-centered aspect, not in our soul. Like it's what we are influenced by. And then our authentic desires are like at the core of our heart, what we desire truly in order to be happy. Because how many of us are running after stuff and we get the thing and we're like,
that was me.
Like, yeah, it's like, it's still making
the ego purpose versus the soul purpose.
Yeah, exactly that. So being able to kind of look at that and key in on what actually would make you, what you actually want, right? You then go to A, which is the anti-belief. And the anti-belief is like, I want to manifest this, but I can't have it because. And so some of those anti-beliefs, very few of them are actually very real. Like, I want to do this, but I can't because I live in a different country, or I want to do this, but because I live in, racism and patriarchy and so on, like there are systems that are against me being able to do certain things. And so some of those are real. And there are other ones that are just our story. Yeah. Is this the truth or the story that you're telling yourself, So being able to come into contact with those narratives are always serving us. If they're false ones, they're always serving us. Like it's either keeping us from having enough courage to do what it is that we want to do. It's keeping us from the rejection that we might feel or the judgment. Sometimes it's because it's just more comfortable to be where we're at. It's more comfortable to complain. Sometimes it's just because we're afraid and we don't want to move there. There's tons of reasons, but being able to at least encounter that is it's mind blowing. It's a huge wake up call. So then you go into G, which is growth, which is like, okay, now that I know what's stopping me, what would I need to do in order to get that to move forward? Like what actions would I need to take? Like how would that look and can I make an actionable plan to get me to that place? Now, there's always going to be bumps along the way. It's not going to happen overnight. There's growth. The growth is ongoing, by the way. It's not like okay, I did it. Now I'm done and growing. Like, you're always constantly evolving. You're always constantly awakening. But that growth process is important because it gives us at least an accessible plan of like how we'd like to approach that. And sometimes that is like, okay, well, I'm going to surrender, but it just depends on what it is that you want. So then you get into I, which is integration. So this is that process of then being able to actually do the steps. So it's one thing to plan. It's another thing to actually do the action. But in that integration process, there's so many beautiful things that happen. And I give this example. So when I was young, I've always been a woman of size, right? Like I come from a family of women with Nigerian background. Like we've always been women of size. So because of society, like I've always felt like I needed to be a certain size in order to be beautiful. And because of that, I've always been so mean to myself. And there's all these goals. I had an eating disorder for 12 years. Like I went through it there, right? But I also suffered with religious trauma. So growing up in church and stuff, purity and so on, like your body's problematic to our onlooking brother. So you need to make sure to keep him in line. And I was like, why is that my responsibility? At 10, right. Just being like, that shouldn't be my fault. Tell him to look away. But that always made me feel fearful around my purity and what that looked like. Right. So when I was 18, trigger warning, I'm about to talk about SA if you'd like to turn this off. I was kidnapped by a football player at my school. We were all supposed to be going to movies with a group of kids together, and he took me somewhere else. Things happened that should not have happened, especially at that age. And when I got back to school, my reputation was tarnished, and everybody was like, "Oh, they went all the way," and I didn't have any choice in the matter. And what I remember is sitting down at the cafeteria and eating 3 Belgian waffles, because I knew somewhere deep down, like, okay, if I'm in an attractive body, then bad things will happen to me. Oh. So I and just completely locked in that narrative, right? Wow. Now, it wasn't a conscious one. Like I really didn't realize it until it was the prime age of 39. But all the years in between where I'm like, why is it that when I start making progress, I stop? Why is it when stuff starts to happen, I start looking good, that I'm like, ugh, like I stop? And I've always thought that was like something's wrong with me. Like what's going on with you? You're lazy, you're not disciplined, you're stupid, whatever. And it wasn't until I was actually writing this book that I started to go through that integration process and go, oh my God. And the phrase that came to mind was, I am more afraid of men than I am of being fat or death due to bad health. So my maxim, like the things that were top important in my life, was safety before the other thing I was trying to manifest, which was a certain body type. Yeah. So like when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I sobbed. I grieved for that girl. Like the girl that for 20 years, I've just been so mean to because she couldn't fit in this box. Yeah. And being able to give love to her and be able to give love to myself, be able to give, like, hopefully with that story, other people being able to give love to themselves and say, okay, I understand now why I wasn't able to manifest that thing, but I was trying to protect myself. Yeah. And we have, loads of us have gone through trauma. So that to me is like one of the most important steps, because we're integrating something that we've gone through, that we're looking and saying, I desire this thing. But then I got to the integration point and go, actually, I don't think I want that thing. Yeah. Like, I just want to be happy. I just want to be nice to myself. Right. So then you go into noticing, which is the universe's way of giving you you're on the right track. It's the angel numbers. It's the, like the sudden opportunities. It's the random DM that you get. And someone's like, hey, and we happen to have the open spot to talk. Let's get it. Yeah. It's that the universe is like, I'm winking at you. I'm letting you know, like, you're on the right path. You've shifted something. You're headed in the direction that you want to be going. And to me, it's really important. That step is really important because it does help you see that it's coming, and it gives you a little bit more patience, where it's like, okay, I know I'm doing something right. I know I'm on the right path. And that leads to then expansion. And expansion is when you get your manifestation and it's juicy for like all of 2 minutes. And then you're like, oh, what's the next thing? Right. And that's kind of where I'm really intentional about the book, because like give yourself a chance to enjoy what
Yeah.
you've manifested so far before you move on to the next thing. And sometimes it does require a refinement process, because like sometimes you get the thing you thought you wanted and then you're like, oh, this don't quite fit. And then you go through that whole process all over again. Because to me, manifestation is not about acquiring things. It's about knowing the self. It's knowing who you are, knowing your desires. You are learning through this process of what kind of soul you are, like what you'd like to see, and also recognizing your power. To me, it's an incredibly magical process. I have a tattoo that says magician on it.
Oh wow, I'm big on magic and miracles.
Same. It's miracle season.
Yeah.
I feel very locked in on that. Like that I'm like, I am a magical person. And like and knowing where my Mercury placement is, I feel like whatever I say, I need to be careful with my words, because
Yeah.
I can get shit going. So it's an important process. To me, this is a way to use alchemy in our universe to not just get what you want, but know who you are.
Yeah, and it's so important because that word imagine method, when I think about it and I think about meaningful manifestation and I think about imagine, I think about imagination, but I think about intentional imagination, right? Because now I'm about the end in mind with intentions, right?
Yeah.
So if, we're coming into, the fourth quarter of the year, you got the holidays, we're going into a new year. Okay. When we visualize about vision boards, right? We want to know new year, new me, whatever. Or when we're lost everything, we want to recalibrate and go to the next level. This book, I know, is where people should really get into, because the energetics of each acronym, each letter breaks it down. And I think when you can break things down and make it make sense, it all manifests, because you're the person who's reading the book to integrate the thoughts and the energy of it to say, oh, what do I want? Why do I want it? Where is this coming from? Is this my ego? Is this my soul? And I think because the ego is so strong and so influential, it wants to take us out. And I want this car. I want this person. I want this money. And I was like, no, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
The word imagine, the root word is
right?
Magic, right? So like what you imagine for yourself, I am the magician of my life. Like, so I can produce that.
We're magicians. It's miracle season. It's meaningful manifestation. It's spiritual shit. It's spiritual fitness. Like, what are we saying? We're manifesting as we're speaking, because our soul has a contract in this lifetime to push this energy and information out so people can heal themselves and get to know themselves. And, there's nothing wrong with having a breakdown, because this is how we have a breakthrough. And I think for you going through that thing, and how old were you in high school? You said the football player kidnapped you, and
that was when I was 18.
18, you had to go through all that. I want to know, because I got some soul questions that came to me to ask you. So before I get to that part, the first one is, what is the dark truth about life that you know?
The dark truth about life that I know.
Yeah.
Life is not fair, and it won't be. I think people are seeking to see fairness in our world. Yeah. And it's not there. There are binaries to everything, and there's balance. Yeah. But like when people are like, oh, love and light, and only wanting to focus on the positive, it's like, oh no, you also have to focus in on the shadow and what's dark. Like, you don't get really deep shadows without really bright light. So even though there is a binary and a balance, like the matrix construct that we live in, I don't think seeks to be fair, because that's not how a soul learns. Like we all, like, for instance, we all have different desires, right? Yeah. Like you want to do different things than I want to do, and so and so. Like, so because of that, like we all have a different desire in our soul that we want to achieve. So in this way, I think our soul has different desires of what our soul wants to learn. Yeah. And that might come through the death of your firstborn child. And like, I hope to God, that never happens to me. Right. But I have known people who have gone through things like that. And we go, why, God? Why, universe? Why would you let that happen to me? Why would this, like, it just things that just seem so unfair. The death of my aunt, right? Where, my husband's mother passed away suddenly last year, 62 years old. And it just like, what in the world? We just don't understand or know why. And I don't think we ever will. And so to me, that it's like seeking, sometimes I'm just in a place where I'm like, I don't even seek to understand. I'm watching people out here being, having their ass out and just acting a fool.
Yeah.
When it comes to when we think about our rights and what we want for humanity and like how they're behaving. And I'm like, I can't even fathom why anyone would ever say or
Yeah.
think that. Like my brain doesn't go in that direction, but I know for whatever reason, the universe does not seek to be fair.
Mhm.
And, what am I going to do about it? Like, I'm here.
That's a great answer because it's true. Like, no one really cares. No one really cares about your pain. Like the fact that you said that. So I have a client, uber successful, just amazing woman. She lost her dad at 12. She lost her brother at 17. She had 4 miscarriages. Her mother had a brain tumor, right? But if you met her, you would never know.
Right.
She makes a lot of money. She's uber successful. And her challenge at times in this moment is she has that father wound, right? Because not having that around.
Yeah.
So to talk about that and spin it back to when you were 18, there's 2 questions in this space, in this portal, because I want to know, because I know you're so deep and you get in there. Do you believe things like that happen to us or happen to people because of one, it's like ancestry trauma, something from like our past life, or energetically we're calling that in to live out our soul in this lifetime?
I think when we think about the law of attraction, I don't believe that the law of attraction is a law. I think
Right.
it's a principle. It's a really fantastic principle. And I think it applies in a lot of ways where perspective wise, we can look at things a certain way and go, oh, I attracted that.
Yeah.
Or I didn't see it because I was negative or whatever the thing is. I think that there are elements of randomness that happen in our universes, which is why I think it's not fair.
Okay.
And so there are some people out here just living their best life, hurting and harming other people. And I don't think that's necessarily anything someone is called in. However, I do know that there are elements to, and I wouldn't call it karma necessarily, because karma, it's not like you did something bad and now you're going to have something bad done to you in that way. But when you think of an energetic debt of sorts, like something that your soul wants to learn, that's what I mean by karma.
Yeah.
And so you might have gone through these experiences that, and in my belief system, if we're above and we're choosing our little spices of like, oh, I want this for my life, I want this for my life, let's put this in my chart. And you're not really thinking about like how terrible it will actually feel when you're in the human space, because from what I know about the afterlife of doing my mediumship work, it's like, oh, go in for 15 minutes. We'll see you in a little bit, right? But we're here for what feels like 80 years. There can be these moments that we absolutely do choose, but I don't think we choose all of them.
Okay.
And I think that there is a certain element of randomness that has to happen in order for us to gain our soul's learning. But like, there's so many people here and there's so many pathways and timelines. There's a book, A Walk on the Other Side, I think it's called, or Walk Beyond. Christian Sutherland, I think is his name, where he talks about, oh yeah, we plan out everything. But like, when we say plan out everything, we have, 3 million branches of how it could go. And these are the destiny points that all kind of lead us to the same space. So from our perspective, it would very much seem random because there are people that we meet or cross paths along the way. And, like we still have free will. So there has to be an element of chaos that happens. So I think that like with what happened to me, I didn't invite that into my life. Like what happened in those little interactions, it was these tiny, minute decisions of like, whose car to get in? Okay, everybody's pile up. Oh, we don't have space in our car. Okay, you get in this car. And then, something really awful happened to me. And it's like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I did anything wrong.
Right.
But also, like, for instance, since I was young, like 6, 7 or something, I was really afraid to have children because I thought I was going to die. I don't know why, where that thought came from. When I was 4, I remember praying with my mom and saying, God, please don't let, my mommy die or my daddy die. Like, da, 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 da. Where would that come from at 4 years old?
Yeah, 4. Where does that come
Weird, right? Why at 6 years old, I'm like, oh no, I'll never have children because I don't want to die again. What? Like, that sounds so random. So when I'm going into labor, at 37, and we're laboring for 3 days and nothing is happening, and they're like, all right, we're going to have a C-section. And I'm going, no, I don't want to die. And they're going, we perform this all the time. We do and she's really blowing me off. And I'm getting really upset because I know something she doesn't.
Right.
And my intuition, I remember stopping the surgeon and she's like, what are you worried about? She wasn't trying to like, infantilize me, but she was like, tell me what you're worried about. And I said, I think that you're going to take my baby out and I'm going to have a bleed and I'm going to bleed out on the table and she will not have.
Wow.
And I said, I need you to make sure that I don't die on that table. I need to be here for my daughter. And so I go in, and sure enough, I deliver the baby. I have a postpartum hemorrhage. They cannot find the bleed for 4 minutes. And I'm just bleeding out. And it's crazy. My husband has a picture where he's like, they're like, look at the baby. And they take a picture, and you can see in the background me just like so much blood. And there is a moment where I feel myself slipping away. I'm in the in-between space. I'm not conscious. I can hear like kind of like disembodied, hums and things. And then it's just nothing. I felt nothing. I heard nothing. I was connected to nothing. It felt like an eternity. And then I could hear my husband's voice yelling for me. And it's like, I came back. They found the bleed, and no surgeon or doctor talked to me about what happened. And I had to find out from a nurse, because I was like, something happened. Like I was gone for a second. And one of the nurses thankfully came back in and told me the whole story. And, and it was like, what would have happened if I didn't prime the surgeon before we went in and let her know, hey, this is something that might happen to me, like what would have happened? I don't know. Like,
yeah, I mean, I could feel it in my solar plexus. Like, wow, that was like you really left and came back.
It was so traumatic. And then it's like, now I'm going to raise a baby. I got this like tiny little gremlin. So cute. This just like chewing on my boobs. Like, what do you do? Like, my brain is not online. Like, I'm still suffering. I'm still going through this experience. And I had to ask myself the question, did I manifest this? Did I manifest this? I was so afraid that this was going to happen. Was it because of me? Or did I know ahead of time? Did I have insight and intuition that this is something I knew my soul was going to have to go through? And was it that, like, I don't know. My spirit guides have said, you knew ahead of time, like you knew what was
because now I'm curious if you didn't perform the C-section, what would have happened?
Right. Like no idea.
What was fate trying to give us in that moment? Because I remember in high school, my teacher was like, do you guys believe in fate or free will or something? Like, do you believe like life is predetermined? Or do you think it's, it's fate? Like, this is just what it is.
Yeah.
Because in my life has been a movie. Growing up in the inner city of Baltimore, seeing so many bad things, negative things, to like be on this side of jumping timelines, like, oh my God, this life, and then feeling bad for being on this side, and then learning that I got a cold switch or I got an accent, and all these things that we put in our mind is like, I don't know if you've done an Akashic record before. You know what Akashic?
Oh yes, I have, and I have an Akashic record reader that is fantastic. ToddBraysonLive.com.
Oh yeah, well, I want to try them out. So I had one late last year, and she was like, "Oh, Eric, you already lived your soul purpose." I'm like, "Huh?" She was like, "Yeah." She was like, "You're here to
you can just have fun."
Yeah, she said, "Your ancestors are so happy that you're so productive." South Node, Virgo, 11th house, right? I love helping people. Right? So you need to have fun. You need to stop being so productive. Have fun. And then she was saying, like, there's two paths that lead to one. One is easy and one is hard. And when it's easy, you're in your heart, and when it's hard, it's in your mind. So it's up to you. And I was just like, she's like, you've done so much work on yourself in this lifetime. You don't ever have to do work again. And you're still going to end up where you belong. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how life puts you in these spaces of people like yourself that you get to meet, that you get to feel. And honestly, there's that thing, contrast and polarity. Like, for you to experience something dramatic like that, I believe the up level of that is the 10x of that, because it's the pendulum.
Yeah.
And because I want you to speak on how do we perceive or contextualize the negative sides of life and embrace them with love, right? Like these painful moments, because all my pain led me to my gain. But if I looked at least the people who look at it in a bad way, who don't have the information, they even sabotage, they never get to where they want to go because they're afraid, right?
Yeah.
You embrace something that was uncomfortable that you knew about, you still stepped in, now you're on the other side. How can we look at a breakup, a heartbreak, losing everything, going back home to mom, dad, whoever, in such a positive way? So when we're in that space, it's not taking over our existence, and we can just have grace and compassion and say, you know what? This is part of my journey. Where it's just taking me to the next level. Because I think we get stuck in these phases, right?
Yeah. I think like number one, it's important to grieve. Like we don't want you to just like, oh, well, I guess that was the universe. Da, 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 and you don't process that grief. Like I had a lot of grieving after having an experience like that. It took me 2 years to really get into a place where I was like, okay, I'm okay to talk about this. I had to look at the pain I experienced. I had to look at all the fears. Like I had PTSD afterwards. Like my husband didn't text me back. Like within 5 minutes, I thought he was dead in a ditch. And it's like, mentally speaking, like soberly speaking, that's not something that, you like, it's like, that wouldn't be the case. But like, I couldn't control the anxiety I was having.
Yeah.
And being like, I can't live like this. But my husband said something really amazing. He goes, you spend, not to invalidate how I was feeling, but you spend about, 90% of your time imagining the worst thing that will happen. What would happen if you gave at least 50% to the best thing that could happen? Just 50%. Like if you give as much time as you worry about what's wrong as what could be right, like how would that, help in your life? And to answer your question, grieving is the important part because we need to acknowledge the pain that we have. And a lot of times, unfortunately, our world is move on, like people don't care, like keep going, whatever. You need to adequately process what it is that you've gone through. Number two it's making space. That is how I've always thought about it. It's like, I can't get new furniture until I get rid of what I have, or I can't get a closet full of new clothes unless I sell what I have. So to me, when those, for instance, relationships, for instance, like get removed out of our lives to make space for, what we would like to actually draw in. And sometimes because we're in that fear space, or because, we have these narratives like, I'll never be with anybody. We'll stay attached to someone for longer than we should. Or, I was in an abusive, narcissistic relationship where this person didn't give a shit about me, and I'm just staying because I want to be in a unit. I want to be married. And, I'm growing up in the Midwest. All of my friends were married at like 21. I got married until I was 28. They all had, 10-year-olds by the time I got married. And, so it was this, like, it's external pressure of feeling like I'm not enough. I just need to, have this thing. But he was telling me all along, this ain't your person. I'm not your person. And holding on to it because I didn't think I deserved any better. And sometimes the universe is like, all right, let me grab you by your hair. Like you're not listening. So let's just remove it now. And sometimes those moments where we feel like everything just got pulled from underneath us, we had warning signs before then.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Usually warning signs before then, we just are not trying to do what the universe is asking us. So we get that rug pull where it's like, all right, in spite of yourself, like we're trying to provide you with what's going to be best for your life. And if you're not in a space where you're, open to receive that, which a lot of us aren't, like we're not ready for that rug pull, right? Like it's really jarring when it happens and you're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to grieve what you lost. But I think for me, I'm always like, all right, well, I guess we're making space, making space for something better. And I kid you not, like I'm 40 years old and I feel like every single time, it wasn't like next month. Sometimes it was, but every single time it was replaced with better.
Yeah.
It was always leveled up. The only time it was replaced with something worse is when I went backwards.
Got it. And it's so important, right? To deal with it all. I think the main thing is that the reason we're afraid to let go of something because we can see the value that it holds in our life.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But you can't see the thing that's coming in.
Right.
That's even 10 times greater. And I experienced that in a situation where, how sometimes I could be very cold. I love people. I'm a lover, but man, you get in those boundaries and okay, that other side of the Pisces, like, okay, I'm gonna really turn this button on, and you got like what never knew you. But what I realized is that most people like this is relationships. This is what happened in relationships. Then going back to the knowing energy, I knew like, something ain't right about this. This is not how. No, this is like. So I kind of went with it, and I was like, it happened again. So okay, I'm done. And they're like, what are you like? I'm done. It's over. Like there's nothing. But I knew it wasn't a belief. It was a knowing. And I think we know things that we try to convince ourselves that, no, it's okay. Things happen. No. You don't need more than one time to know what's for people listening. Stop giving yourself and these people all these chances. If you're 35 and older, or even 30 and older, you know what you're doing.
For me, I think I'm like, I'll give you one chance.
Yeah.
You have one chance. And that's like being generous, right?
Right.
Like you have one chance. And then at that point, like if we good, like if I see the same behavior again, it's not that I'm not being forgiving or not being like, and we're talking about relationships, right?
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
I had some friendships that didn't make it through the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, well, number one, I realized I'm neurodivergent and I really enjoy my alone time. I'm actually an introvert. Nice. Um, so there was that. But then, when some of the George Floyd stuff happened and people were having very questionable responses. And then I suddenly start to realize, wait a minute, you don't have any Black friends except me. And you're telling me that I should think about this differently. Like you're telling me I'm being biased. You're telling, like all this kind of weird stuff coming up. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know. And then it's starting to look back years and years and years and going, oh, that's always been there.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't feel safe here anymore. And, try to give it a little bit of a chance. But like once you realize that, it's like, whoop, you kind of level up into another space where it's like, oh, well, we don't feel like we are aligned anymore energetically. Like we don't feel energetically aligned anymore. And that can happen with a job. That can happen with a friend, a partnership. That can happen with a manifestation that you're trying to draw in. And it's like, oh, actually, that's not something I want. So at some point, if you take the time to reflect, you'll have that inner knowing and going like, is this really for me? Or is this something I'm trying to force because I'm afraid of losing something? I'm afraid of being in scarcity. It's like time to move on.
Yeah, and it's important who you have in your life. That's what I learned from my awakening, Dark Night of the Soul, is that some people energy that can be around can stop other energy and manifestations from coming in.
Yeah.
Because they have a very dark undertone or they have a very inauthentic aura that you love but that you didn't know about because they kept it from you, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to kind of like shed some light on your husband, because for him to hold space in those moments that you were going through the postpartum or whatever you were going through says a lot. Because I talked to some of my clients who they might be dating or might be single, and they need to make a big decision about a career move or opportunity. And I was like, this is where a man comes into your life, not to give you validation, not to justify what you should do, but just to have the presence of the energy there gives you more safety in your own body, that you say, you know what, this is why you need a partner or you have a relationship. Relationship to me is not shared space as much as it is shared truth and just have perspective, right?
Yeah. Place to expand.
Yeah.
So for instance, like I could probably be happily single, for the rest of my life after I got out of my last marriage. And my partnership, what he brings to the table is, I always asked afterwards, like, I want an equal and capable partner.
Yeah. And
this is what this means to me. I think to speak to your point, like we live in a patriarchy. So masculine energy is what is valued. So it's not like people are like, oh my God, wow, they're so feminine. Look how they hold space and look how nurturing they are. They're not saying that. They're saying, like, oh, you're not at home with your kids. You're not doing it. By the way, motherhood is extremely masculine, right? Like taking care of everybody, making sure everybody's safe, making sure everybody has their lunches and everybody's on time. That's incredibly masculine as a task. But then on top of that, it's like, all right, well, then I also need to work. And then I'm supposed to take on household responsibilities. I'm supposed to do this, that, and the other. And I think especially for modern women, like we are not valued for the feminine aspects that we bring to the table, right? Absolutely. I am the table. I'm the fucking table. Okay. Yeah. Like I hate those comments. Like, what do you bring to the table? I am the table. Yeah. I am the nurturer. I am the mother. I am this, I'm that, So especially the values that like the intuitive aspects, right? Like to me, masculine, feminine, like however you identify, pronouns don't matter here. What I'm saying is that in the case of feminine and masculine energy, like you have you, Eric, intuitive is the feminine energy. It's receiving, right? It's the outlet, right? The plug is the masculine energy. Yeah. So these two binaries come together energetically, symbiotically to get shit done. Okay. Yeah. So in these energies, we both contain both of them, right? Unfortunately, for a lot of our modern women, we're watching men kind of, and I don't want to say men have it all in that like, reductive way, but like world is tuned to them. Like what is more natural for them, right? Yeah. But it harms them as well because it doesn't create space for them to be emotional. I'm an extremely masculine woman. Right. I have a lot of drive. I have a lot of fire in my chart. I'm like, let's get stuff done. When I'm ready to do something, get out of my way. Like I am ADHD superpower. Like I can just
Make it
Tune
happen.
in and get it done. The thing is that I never needed a man in my life for money. Like
Right.
I've always been good at making money. Like I never needed that. I don't need the home. I don't need that, like I could do it myself. What I want is to be able to want to be with someone,
Yeah.
want to be around someone, want to enjoy their energy, want to, when I'm expressing something to you, that you are adept in being able to hold space for me, because I by myself am an entire unit. I am an independent. I am capable. And what I need is a supporting partner.
There we
And
go.
I want to be that for them as well, right? Like I want to be that for them. Like me and my husband have these like long talks, about cerebral stuff, and he's into spiritual stuff too sometimes. And like we hold space for each other. We're good tandem partners. But unfortunately, like, and I know especially in like, at least for me in LA and New York, when I was in those places, a lot of the people I was dating were like, oh, like Peter Pan, yay! Like let's just like. There's more and more women. I can get more and more women. That ego like really pops off. And a lot of women don't feel safe because then they're like, no one's ever going to choose me. And that puts them in an energy of lack. And then they feel like they need to be more masculine to get someone to lock down. When like, honestly, when I was on the first date with my husband, he was giving me that swan song where he's like, I'm not really looking for anything serious right now. I just gotta. And I was like, oh, let me stop you right here. I literally did this, the tiny violin.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me stop you right here. I am only here for this conversation. I just want to speak to you. I just want to get to know who you are. If we get married and have a child, great. I never see you again. This is perfect.
Right,
okay?
right.
And I released that pressure because I wasn't in a scarcity space. And I'm like, I'm just here for this conversation. And then bloom. But during day 3, will you be my girlfriend? Day 10, I'm in love with you.
Women who want more are going to be in their masculine. It's okay.
Which is okay. But
right. Like there's nothing wrong with it. I think guys get intimidated. I think the world has made some women feel like they have to be that way, but they don't understand that's why they're masculine. Because look at it. If we're valued the most in the world and that's what women see the most blueprint, they think that's what they want, right? We talk about manifestation. Then you manifest these things. Because I have clients who have all the material stuff and it's like, I just want some love.
Yeah. Soft life.
I just want some love. I just want to hug, someone to talk to at night. It's cool having this G-Wagon and making these millions, but today I don't care about that. I just want someone to love me for me. The perfect relationship for anyone is the relationship of yourself. The perfect marriage for you is the marriage of self. Being in a relationship with yourself, to love yourself 10 times more when you're not with your partner, if you have one. So when you do come together, it blossoms. That's what I've learned. The creator in me, I'm here. What I need to do, God, I'm praying, I'm meditating. So when I get with my girlfriend, we hanging out, it's 10x, right? Yeah. Because I know from my last situation what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to make the relationship my God because, oh my God, I got love. Wow, this is beautiful. Yeah. Because then you'll push yourself out of it. And we don't always have to be everything for the family and for the one. We have to do that for ourselves first.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing I think helps most people, but it's hard, right? Because it's a program.
Super hard.
Yeah.
It's super hard, especially as a mom. You just lose yourself.
Yeah.
Like I think my daughter just started preschool this year and it was like, oh, wow. Like a little bit of myself has come back. And I'm going to London next month on a trip for a week. Without her, without my husband, I'm going with a friend. And I was like, oh man, I haven't done this since before the pandemic. Right. I'm getting a part of myself back, and feeling that it is hard when if you're not in a good space when you meet someone that you end up putting a lot of your self-value in the other person. And then it's like really hard to lose that person because you've attached your self-value to them. Mm-hmm. And what I learned, lifelong learning, is that like I am the table. Like I said, like I am the value. Like I need to be that value for myself and know what I bring into the world, of how to feel happy with myself, how to love myself. And when that started to shift, and I didn't have to get perfect at it either. Yeah. When that started to shift, I didn't have that scarcity feeling. And I was able to choose based on that energy, that neutral energy, instead of that scarcity energy where I was willing to settle and be with people that were not good for my energy.
The last few questions. So the first question is why do you think fear dominates the world? And the last two is like, why is love and money put on such a high pedestal?
Okay. So let me answer your second one first.
Yeah.
So love and money, I think love is why we're here. Like romantic love can be a part of that. But like to me, when I started to realize, like I do a lot of channeling, right? And so I have a lot of higher self come in and talk about, and I'm like, what's the point? Why are we here? Like, what is the whole point of this matrix and manifesting? What's the point of like going through these elections and war and all that kind of stuff? And to me, it's, the soul purifying itself through the process of love. And what does it mean to be loving to your neighbor? Why was that the highest commandment? Like, why is that so important? And how do we see love in our next door neighbor, our barista, someone who celebrates a religion we don't? Like, how can we be more loving? And so because that is such a focus, I think it's such a need that we have. It's not a bad need. It's unfortunately that it's been romanticized in such a way, the nuclear family, like that, which is not bad, but it's just, we've put it in this insular little box where it's like, okay, it only exists in this way. And this is how you get it. And it's like, oh, but I can't get that through a friendship. I can't get that through being able to just make eye contact with someone I just met, or, like we've strangled it into this really small box. And so I think when we start to see the world as like, that, like, for instance, I had a client today who said that she met this man at a spa, not anything romantic, but he was very genuinely kind to her. And she just hasn't had a lot of men who are genuinely kind to her. And it was water in the desert. Like, she could live on that little moment of spark of just like, oh, someone was really nice to me. And that make her weak because like, we're so starved. Like, we're so like, look at the comment section on Instagram.
Yeah.
People are hilarious, but like, people are mean, like the meanest things that people would say because they're hurting. Like, the people are in pain and they don't know how to express it. And they take it out on the opposing side. Their wounds are what show us their limitations. Like, I'm hurting, I don't have love, people don't like me or whatever. So you're a fat bitch who you'll never make. And it's like, that's where your wound is. I see that. Okay. I see where you're at. And so that's, I think, why love is important. Money is important because we are in a patriarchal society that is very capitalistic and it's very ego driven. Like, how much more money can we get? Like, why is it that people put money before people? Why is it that they're voting against free lunch when they want people to have more children? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, make it make sense.
Yeah.
You are pro-life, then be pro-life. Like, be pro-love. Like,
be pro-love.
More things. Like, so, like, we don't have an, equanimity in our society because we are often in scarcity. We're always just thinking about how can we get and preserve ourselves. And it's a very selfish approach. Money is just an expression of who we are at the core. That's it. Like, if I'm a generous person, when I get money, I'm going to still be a generous person. Sure. If I'm a selfish asshole that just wants greed and wants to hoard money, then I'll just be that, right? Like, you could be that poor, but you'll be that rich, So to me, money just amplifies who we are. And we've seen those who will step on other people rewarded for that and get to have all the things. It's like, why are the mean, evil villains or whatever, the people that make the most money? They're willing to do the most cutthroat things. Get it? Like, I'm not willing to do things that Elon Musk is willing to do. Yeah. Like, never. I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. I wouldn't be able to sit with my soul. So for that reason.
Some people don't even have a soul. They don't even.
NPCs out here.
Yeah, that part.
So, and maybe I hate that example only because then there are people like, you might be an NPC and there's like a hierarchy, but facts, right? Like, very much so, where people are not acknowledged and open to their heart. And so they act in accordance, they just mimic like what they see. And so, so fear, I think fear, I'm someone who suffers with anxiety. And so I often see in my lack of control, there are so many fears that come up. And, to give an example, my husband works nights right now, and my daughter's like room is right next door to my office, but my bedroom is all the way down the hallway. And there's stairs right here.
How old is she?
She's 3.
Okay. Oh, she's
3. Okay. So she's been sleeping in her own big bed since she was 1. She's just like, I know what I'm doing. I've been here before. Like, I don't want this crib.
Boss. Wow.
Yes, she's Taurus moon. Taurus sun, Capricorn moon.
Oh, boss.
Ruling
Earth,
everything.
grounded.
But I get super nervous at night. I'm not joking. I know this sounds like an exaggeration. I have a machete by my bed, ready. So if anyone were to break into our house or anything like that, I am ready. I have calculated how much time it takes me to get to her room. What to do. Like, fear because of what I watched in the world. However, I think that because we don't spread enough love, we don't have enough community. Fear is what naturally, it's the opposite side of the spectrum. I don't think the opposite of love is hate. I think the opposite of love is fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
because when people are out there being hateful, it's as a result of them fearing you're going to take what I have.
Yeah.
You're going to take my belief, or you're going to do whatever. I'm afraid of this thing. So the action is hate, but hate is not the opposite of love. Fear is. So I think that that's why it runs rampant, is when we are not a society where we prioritize community and loving our neighbor and connecting with another person. We end up in these kind of fear spaces. For instance, the person that moves away and gets their, 100 acres and preps for themselves and has their little like enclave. It's like, I'm ready to be against anyone that's around me. When I start thinking about like, all right, if we go through an economic collapse, like what would we do? Are we moving? Or are we hunkering down in our community with the people that we've made friends with? Are we building a garden? Because we have a little spot where we can make a garden, to make a community garden where people can get their fruits and vegetables if they don't have enough food. How can I serve my community? That is what will keep me safe.
Yeah.
Not like hoarding my money and resources and whatever. Being able to lend it in means that people aren't going to come and take over my house.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I just got some downloads last week about money, right? So I was watching the Instagram, so on. I saw a reel and it says for every dollar you give, you get 1.6, I think, percent or something back, right? So they were saying the people who give the most make the most. So I started thinking even deeper, like, free money has no real energy on it. So it's important what you do with the money. But the people who give the money, they know that. And the people they're giving to don't know that. Think about credit card companies. They're giving free money. That's why they have all the money. From a universal perspective, if you're giving your charity, right, happy money, you give them with love, it's all going to come back. Even if you don't have it, if you give your last dollar, I promise you it's going to come back. Yeah. So listening, like, and there's also something called, I don't know if you heard of it, reality transurfing. It talks about when we give things importance, we push them away from ourselves, right? So say, i.e. a relationship. Oh my God, I want this person to call, text me back. You're constantly pushing that energy away. But when you're thinking about it, you actually have it, right? Yeah. It comes in. So what I'm saying is that people give love. I'm a loving human being. I love, someone told me the other day, she said, Eric, you remind me of just a tall walking bundle of love. That's what I see. And that's what I feel for. I was like, damn, someone told me that in the reading. It's like, oh, so nice. I'm here to love, right? So I know how to love people so much because I didn't get the love I wanted as a kid. So I became love. And then I was afraid to receive it. Now I'm just embracing it. But I'm here to say, Meaningful Manifestation, Spiritual Shit Podcast, Alea Lovely. Listen to her, follow her, and really tap into the subconscious and the superconscious of who she is, because I do believe, again, she will have her own syndicated television show. Like her
thank you. Let's
like a Sherry show, like Jennifer Hudson. Like, seriously. So can you give the listeners, the viewers, where can we find you? How can we connect? I mean, I need to do a card reading. Like, God dang, sign me up. Where can we find you to connect and, benefit from what you offer to the world?
Absolutely. So you can find all my stuff at thelovelyalia.com. You can find my book there /book. You can find my services. You can find me on Instagram. I hang out there at The Lovely Alia. Like, that's where everything is. And you can get Meaningful Manifestation wherever books are sold.
Got it. And so you can be Barnes and Nobles everywhere.
Yeah, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, Target.
When is it? Did we have a pre-order link as well?
Yes, we do at thelovelyalia.com /book.
Well, I need it all.
Please pre-order. Please pre-order.
This would be beautiful gifts, right? Matter of fact, for me, because I have so many women clients. One of my clients is a big manifestation coach.
Yeah.
I get her a book for Christmas.
It's a wonderful Christmas gift.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like, it's perfect for that time of year.
Yeah, I'm going to get it for you. So people follow her, get her book, Meaningful Manifestation, subscribe to her podcast, Spiritual Shit Podcast, get all those episodes, and stay connected. And we did it again. Another beautiful episode on Spiritual Fitness Podcast. Alea Lovely, thank you so much for your time, your generosity, your truth, your authenticity, and just you being you. So I wish you nothing but the best. We'll be here soon. Peace and love.